If two people are truly meant to be together, there is one pattern that almost never fails. It does not matter how different their lives are or how surprising their meeting may seem. This one thing nearly always shows up first. Most people believe fate looks gentle and beautiful right from the start. They imagine it arriving as instant comfort, effortless love, and a feeling that everything has finally fallen into place. They picture two people meeting, smiling, and somehow knowing right away that this is the person they have been waiting for. But real fate does not always unfold that way. Real fate enters quietly and then changes everything. It does not always bring peace at first. Instead, it brings disruption. When two people are truly meant for one another, life does not rush them into being together. Instead, it often creates distance. It pulls them apart, questions their beliefs, and forces them to face themselves. It tears down illusions they did not even realize they had been living with. And this is not cruelty. It is preparation. Before two destined people can truly come together, they often have to be transformed. Many people misunderstand what destined love really is. They think it should feel comfortable from the very start, like a safe place where nothing hurts. But destined love rarely begins with comfort. It starts with recognition. The first sign of a deep and meaningful connection is not peace. It is recognition. You meet someone and something inside you responds before your mind has time to understand what is happening. You may not feel calm. You may not feel secure. You may not even feel certain about them, yet you feel seen in a way that unsettles you. It feels as though they notice parts of you that you usually keep hidden, even from yourself. This can feel confusing because most people expect love to feel soothing and reassuring. But destined connections often feel uncomfortable at the start. That discomfort does not necessarily mean the person is right for you, but it can mean the relationship is bringing important parts of yourself into awareness. It may reveal your fears, emotional wounds, and unfinished inner work. They seem to reflect parts of you that have been waiting to be acknowledged. They do not only see the version of you that you show the world, they seem to awaken deeper layers within you, and that experience can feel both powerful and unsettling. That is why meaningful connections often feel intense instead of easy. They bring awareness before they bring closeness. This is also why people who eventually build lasting relationships do not always stay together in the beginning. Sometimes life separates them early on. One person may still be carrying unresolved emotional pain. One may fear vulnerability. One may not yet understand their own worth. One may still be loving from a place of fear instead of emotional security. Sometimes both people are still growing, and even with good intentions, they can unintentionally hurt each other. So life creates distance. It quietly says, not yet. If two people come together before they have grown into themselves, they may damage something that could eventually become healthy and lasting. The separation, as painful as it feels, can become part of the journey rather than the end of it. It is not always punishment. Sometimes it becomes preparation for personal growth. When meaningful relationships end or pause, the pain often feels different from ordinary heartbreak. It is not only sadness, it is confusion. It feels like losing your sense of direction. You do not simply miss another person. You feel as though something inside you has been deeply shaken. That happens because certain relationships do more than meet emotional needs. They challenge you to grow. When someone leaves your life after making a deep impact, you may begin looking inward in ways you never did before. You notice your fear of abandonment. You recognize how much validation you seek from other people. You see your habit of giving too much of yourself simply to keep someone close. You become aware of the ways you ignore your own emotional needs while trying to meet everyone else's. These realizations are uncomfortable, but they can also become the start of genuine healing. The pain is not always there to destroy you. Sometimes it exists to awaken you. Profound relationships have a unique way of changing you quietly. Even when there is no communication, even when there is complete silence, something inside you continues to shift. Logic may tell you to move on, yet you gradually become more aware of yourself. You become more careful about who you allow into your life. You become more honest about your feelings, your boundaries, and your values. Things you once accepted no longer feel acceptable. Situations you once tolerated now leave you emotionally exhausted. People you once chased no longer hold the same appeal. You begin valuing depth instead of surface-level attention and real connection instead of temporary comfort. Often, you do not even realize that this growth began when that person entered your life. They became a catalyst for change. They started a process within you that could no longer be ignored. The relationship may have changed or even ended, but the transformation continued. This kind of connection does not have to create obsession. Instead, it can create reflection. Rather than thinking about them every moment of every day, you begin thinking about your own life, your patterns, and your choices. You ask yourself deeper questions. Why do I love the way I do? Why do I fear closeness? Why do I settle for less than I deserve? Why do I ignore my own needs while trying to meet everyone else's? Why do I keep repeating the same relationship patterns? Those questions slowly reshape how you think, how you feel, and how you move through life. Meaningful relationships often continue shaping you long after the circumstances have changed. They reshape how you view love. They change how you see yourself. They raise your standards not only for the people you allow into your life, but also for the way you treat yourself. They teach you that love is not only about being together, it is also about becoming emotionally whole on your own. As time passes, you may notice that you are no longer willing to repeat old cycles. You stop chasing people who cannot meet you emotionally. You stop ignoring warning signs simply to feel chosen. You stop accepting inconsistency as affection. You stop confusing attention with genuine care. Instead, you begin valuing peace, honesty, emotional maturity, consistency, and mutual effort. This growth often feels natural, even though it was born from pain. That is one way you recognize that a relationship was meaningful. The greatest impact is not always whether someone stayed forever. Sometimes the deepest gift is the person you became because of the experience. Some relationships remain, others end, but the healthiest ones leave you with greater self-awareness, stronger boundaries, deeper compassion, and a clearer understanding of the kind of love that truly allows both people to grow. Whether the person returns or not is not always the main point. The deeper purpose is often the transformation, the awakening, and the shift toward a more conscious way of living and loving. When two people are truly meant to impact one another's lives, their story rarely follows a straight path. There are detours, delays, misunderstandings, and long periods of separation. There are moments when everything seems impossible. There are moments when both people question what they felt. There are moments when circumstances appear stronger than the connection itself, yet something continues unfolding beneath the surface. Growth continues, lessons continue, awareness continues. Even during long stretches of silence, life keeps shaping both individuals into the people they need to become. That is why certain connections leave such a lasting impression. It is not because they were perfect. It is because they changed something fundamental inside you. They revealed strength you never knew you possessed. They exposed wounds that had remained unhealed. They showed you patterns that needed to end. They pushed you to become more authentic. They challenged you to stop hiding from yourself. Many people believe destiny is simply about finding the right person. But often, destiny is just as much about becoming the right person. The connection becomes a mirror. It reflects everything that asks for your attention. It reveals both your strengths and your fears. It shows the qualities you are proud of, while also exposing the habits, emotional defenses, and limiting beliefs that have quietly shaped your life for years. It invites you to accept that meaningful growth rarely happens without discomfort. It reminds you that the deepest form of love is not only about romance, it is also about becoming more honest with yourself. When you finally understand this, your outlook begins to change. You stop asking only whether someone is meant for you. Instead, you begin asking whether you are becoming the person who can truly receive healthy, lasting love. That single shift changes everything. Instead of trying to control every outcome, you begin trusting the process. Instead of chasing certainty, you focus on becoming emotionally stronger, wiser, and more self-aware. By doing so, you create the kind of life where meaningful relationships can grow naturally rather than through fear or force. Perhaps that is why truly meaningful connections never feel ordinary. Even if they end, they leave behind wisdom. Even if they are delayed, they leave behind growth. Even if they remain silent, they continue teaching you. Their greatest gift is not always the relationship itself. Sometimes their greatest gift is the person you become because of them. Whether your paths cross again or remain separate forever, the transformation stays with you. Once your outlook has changed, you cannot return to the person you were before. That is the quiet power of destiny. It does not simply bring two people together. It changes them first, so that if life ever brings them together again, they are able to love one another with greater honesty, maturity, and understanding. It reveals your ability to love as well as your fear of loving. It uncovers your courage alongside your deepest insecurities. It shines light on both your hopes and your limits. This journey is not always pleasant. In fact, it can be deeply uncomfortable. Growth usually is, but discomfort does not always mean something is wrong. Sometimes discomfort is simply proof that something important is changing within you. Sometimes the connections that challenge you the most become the ones that teach you the greatest lessons. Sometimes the people who disrupt your life become the very people who help you understand it more deeply. The deepest connections are rarely the easiest ones. They ask more from you. They ask for honesty. They ask for accountability. They ask for emotional growth. They ask you to release old versions of yourself that no longer serve your future. That is why they can feel so powerful. Not because another person completes you, but because the experience pushes you to become more complete within yourself. As time passes, you may eventually realize that the greatest gift of the connection was never the relationship alone. It was the person you became because of it. It was the strength you built, the wisdom you gained, the boundaries you learned to set, the self-respect you finally embraced, the emotional maturity you developed, and the clarity you found about what love truly means. Real love is not only about chemistry. It is not only about attraction. It is not only about timing. It is also about growth, responsibility, healing, and conscious choice. That is why deeply meaningful connections leave such a lasting mark on people's lives. They awaken something, they transform something, they redirect something, they move you closer to the person you were always capable of becoming, whether the story eventually leads back to that person or toward an entirely different future. The transformation remains. Sometimes that transformation is the real destiny all along. It unfolds through distance, uncertainty, and deep inner work. It asks for growth before lasting connection. Again and again, this is the pattern that quietly repeats itself. You may find yourself thinking about them during moments when you are becoming more aware of yourself. They come to mind during seasons of quiet personal growth, during nights when everything around you becomes still and your thoughts feel louder than the world itself. They appear during unexpected emotional breakthroughs, moments when you suddenly understand something about yourself that had stayed hidden for years. You are not necessarily thinking about them because you are lonely. You are not necessarily thinking about them because you need attention or reassurance. Often, you think of them because the connection carried meaning, and your mind keeps reflecting on what that experience changed within you. Certain relationships become part of the story you tell yourself about who you are and who you are becoming. That does not automatically mean the relationship is destined to continue. It means the experience has become part of your personal growth. Your inner world keeps integrating what it learned. It keeps placing that chapter where it belongs. It keeps absorbing the lessons, the emotions, and the changes that followed. Some meaningful connections do not simply disappear because time passes. They remain present in quiet ways. They return during periods of growth. They return when you heal. They return when you outgrow older versions of yourself. That is because the connection was never only about romance. It was also about transformation. Many people ask why a connection like this can feel hard to replace. They try to move on. They meet someone new. They begin different relationships. They fill their lives with conversations, responsibilities, activities, and routines. They tell themselves that moving forward means forgetting. Sometimes they even believe they have succeeded. Life begins to feel normal again. They laugh, they socialize, and they continue living. Yet, beneath the surface, something still feels unfinished. There is a quiet emptiness that refuses to disappear. Not because the new person lacks kindness or because the new relationship lacks effort, but because the experience touches different parts of them. Some relationships awaken a depth that others simply do not. A deeply meaningful connection is rarely built on attraction alone. It is not only about chemistry, excitement, comfort, or familiarity. At its best, it encourages growth. It asks you to become more honest with yourself. It invites you to face parts of yourself that may have stayed hidden or ignored for years. Whether or not the relationship lasts, the experience often changes the way you understand yourself. Sometimes, life changes both people separately before they are ever able to reconnect, if they reconnect at all. Distance is not always punishment. Sometimes it becomes a classroom. While two people are apart, life shapes them through challenges, discomfort, and personal experience. Each person learns different lessons that could not have been learned in quite the same way while they were together. One person may begin learning healthy boundaries. They discover how to say no without feeling guilty. They learn to stop giving more than they receive. They realize that love should not require constant self-sacrifice and that choosing themselves is not selfish. It is necessary for healthy relationships. The other person may begin learning accountability. They come to understand that silence can leave lasting wounds. They realize that avoiding difficult emotions does not make those emotions disappear. They learn that actions have consequences, even when their intentions are misunderstood. Gradually, they begin recognizing that genuine connection requires responsibility as well as affection. One person builds self-respect. They stop accepting uncertainty as proof of love. They stop waiting endlessly for clarity that never arrives. They begin valuing consistency instead of empty promises. The other develops emotional courage. They learn to remain present with discomfort instead of running from it. They discover that vulnerability is not weakness, but an essential part of authentic intimacy. One person learns to stop chasing. They recognize that love cannot be forced, and that pursuing someone who is not emotionally available only creates imbalance and pain. The other learns to stop running. They realize that emotional distance does not protect them from loss. It simply postpones the growth they have been avoiding. Both people keep changing, yet neither sees the complete picture. Sometimes that uncertainty itself creates the space needed for transformation. If everything were clear from the beginning, there might be little reason to question old habits or develop new ways of relating. Before meaningful relationships can move into a healthier stage, many illusions begin to fall away. Old beliefs slowly lose their power. Ideas such as love should never be difficult. The belief that if someone truly cared, they would never leave. The idea that love must be earned through suffering. The hope that another person can somehow complete you. These beliefs may feel comforting, but they often create dependence, fear, and unrealistic expectations that no relationship can sustain forever. Life gradually challenges those assumptions. The process is rarely comfortable. It unfolds through silence, distance, disappointment, and long periods of reflection. During those moments, you begin seeing yourself more clearly. You recognize repeating patterns. You notice the ways you abandoned yourself in past relationships. You begin understanding that love is not meant to rescue you, and that another person cannot heal wounds you have not yet faced yourself. Genuine connection grows most naturally when both people are becoming emotionally whole rather than expecting the other person to fill every empty space. Eventually, something begins to change within you. You stop needing another person in order to feel complete. You stop searching constantly for signs. You stop waiting for one message that you believe will change your entire life. You stop believing your happiness depends on whether someone returns. That shift is not bitter. It is peaceful. It reflects a growing sense of emotional stability rather than emotional surrender. Real love is not built on dependence. It is built on choice. When two people can stand securely on their own, love becomes something they freely give instead of something they desperately need. That is where healthier relationships begin to grow. If they return, they often return as different people. They return with greater awareness, deeper maturity, and a clearer understanding of themselves. They may be capable of creating something healthier than they could before, and if they do not return, the lessons remain just as valuable. You are no longer the same person who entered the relationship. You are stronger, clearer, and more grounded. You have absorbed experiences that continue shaping your future. That may be one of the deepest truths about meaningful connections. They are not ultimately about possession. They are about transformation. They enter your life not necessarily to remain forever in the same form, but to awaken you, change you, and guide you toward a deeper understanding of love, self-respect, emotional maturity, and personal growth. When people who are genuinely ready for one another meet again, something often feels quietly different. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, it does not demand attention. Instead, there is a greater sense of calm, honesty, and mutual understanding. Whatever the future holds, both people have already been changed by the journey that brought them there. Instead, it feels steady. Your body relaxes before your mind fully understands why. There is less tension in your thoughts, less fear about what could go wrong, and far less need to prove yourself. You are no longer constantly performing or protecting yourself the way you once did. What naturally takes its place is honesty, the kind that feels effortless, the kind that does not require endless explanations or constant defenses. The connection feels calmer because both people have already walked through their own periods of uncertainty and growth. It feels deeper because each has taken time to look inward and face difficult parts of themselves. It feels clearer because many of the old illusions have already fallen away. It is not perfect, and it does not pretend to be. Instead, it is more aware. Both people understand that love alone is not enough. It must be supported by maturity, responsibility, communication, trust, and steady effort. The fantasy has faded. What remains is something far more valuable, something real, something conscious, something built on truth rather than imagination. That is why reunions that happen under healthier circumstances often feel surprisingly peaceful. The intensity that once created confusion is replaced with understanding. Fear gradually gives way to openness. Uncertainty is replaced by greater clarity. Neither person is trying to complete the other anymore. Instead, they are choosing each other from a place of greater wholeness, and that changes the relationship completely. The strongest relationships are not the ones that never face challenges. They are the ones that survive growth and change. They allow both people to evolve, learn, and return to one another with a deeper understanding of themselves and each other. That may be one of the most meaningful truths about lasting love. It is not about finding someone who removes every difficulty from your life. It is about meeting someone whose presence encourages you to grow, inspires meaningful change, and helps you discover parts of yourself that had been waiting to emerge. Whether that person stays, leaves, returns, or moves on, the experience can still remain meaningful. Sometimes, the greatest gift of a significant relationship is not the relationship itself. Sometimes, it is the person you become because of it. There is a different kind of awareness in healthier relationships. It can be seen in the way words are spoken, in the way silence is respected rather than feared, and in the way boundaries are honored instead of challenged. There are no games to decode, no hidden motives to uncover, and no constant need to test one another's feelings. Instead of uncertainty, there is a growing sense of recognition, as though both people are rediscovering something familiar, this time with greater maturity, wisdom, and inner strength. Sometimes, even after all of that growth, two people do not find their way back to one another. That can be one of the hardest truths to accept. Yet it does not mean the connection lacked meaning. It does not mean the experience was imagined, mistaken, or wasted. Not every important relationship is meant to last forever. Some exist only long enough to transform the people involved. Some enter your life, reshape your inner world, and leave once their purpose has been fulfilled. There are relationships that help break patterns carried through families or repeated across many years of life. They reveal where love became confused with sacrifice, where attachment was mistaken for security, and where silence was mistaken for peace. They bring long-hidden pain into awareness so it can finally be understood instead of endlessly repeated. Other relationships arrive when you have neglected your own needs. They reflect the ways you allow yourself to be treated. Through them, you begin recognizing where you settle for less than you deserve, where you make yourself smaller to preserve a relationship, and where you abandon your own needs simply to keep someone close. They remind you that love should never require you to sacrifice your dignity, your voice, or your sense of self. Those lessons are often painful, but they become the foundation for healthier relationships in the future. Some people awaken emotional depth within you. They help you reconnect with feelings that had been buried for years. They remind you that you are capable of vulnerability, compassion, and genuine connection. Even if they eventually leave, they often leave you more emotionally open than you were before. Others quietly redirect the course of your life. Meeting them shapes the choices you make, the standards you develop, and the direction your life begins to take. They may not remain because their role was never meant to be permanent. Sometimes their purpose is simply to prepare you for what comes next. That does not make these relationships any less meaningful. If anything, it makes them deeply significant. Some of the most valuable experiences in life are not defined by how long they last, but by how deeply they change us. Their lasting gift is not always their presence. Often, it is the growth, wisdom, self-respect, and clarity they leave behind.